The original meaning of the word sacred is that which is set apart. Therefore, sacred places are places that are set apart for contemplation of the divine, in whatever way you conceive of the divine. While Druids of our order hold that all places are sacred, we also consider that special places have a power to facilitate meditative states and contact with the divine realm. An example would be the sacred circle. Traditionally, Druids of our order don't wear watches or other timekeeping devices inside the sacred circle. This is because the circle is a place where time has no meaning. Druids have always believed that time and space are not separate things. The stone circles in Europe were aligned to mark the passage of time. In these places, time was measured in sacred spaces. The perception of time is therefore linked to space. One tradition that many Druids in our order celebrate is the marking of sacred places. If you're out walking in the woods, you may come upon a place that calls to you. Stop there and meditate for a while. If this place is particularly meaningful to you, you may mark it for others by making a small pile of stones. From a psychological perspective, setting aside a sacred space allows you to enter that space, step outside of time, and do your own work of contemplating the divine within. If you have a special place set aside for this activity, and only for this activity, then entering it puts you in a special state of mind. Psychologists call this situation-specific learning. If your sacred space becomes associated in your mind with relaxation, meditation, and contemplation, then after a while, simply entering your sacred space will put you into a meditative state. If you don't have access to an outdoor place to create your own sacred space, you can create one indoors. Set up a small altar table somewhere in the corner of your home. Cover it with things that help you to achieve a meditative state. You can use candles, incense, houseplants, or even pictures of nature scenes or loved ones. You can use anything that might help you to connect with the divine within you. This might be a good time to talk about the concept of prayer and what it means to a Druid of our order. Prayer in the way it usually is understood has no meaning for a Druid in the Black Mountain order. What others might call prayer, a Druid of our order would consider communion with the divine. There's no need to make petitions or requests, as an omnipotent deity would already know what you need. For Druids, there's no need for prayer in the traditional sense, because we already know what we need as well. To a Druid of our order, prayer is more of a meditative state that allows us to seek the imbus, that harmony of wise mind that comes when our emotional minds and our rational minds are in perfect balance. In this meditative state, we come to know that there is no separation. We are all one at the center, and we are all part of the divine, or that which some choose to call God. There are places unique to each individual that would help to achieve the meditative state necessary to find the imbus or the awan. These places are sacred spaces and sacred places. If you're fortunate enough to own a parcel of land in a rural or semi-rural setting, you can mark out a sacred space for your own rituals. Stone circles mark sacred places all over Europe, and many modern Druids have continued this practice by erecting stone circles for their own ritual space. You don't have to build another Stonehenge. A circle of small stones big enough to accommodate the members of your group should be sufficient. If you don't have access to stones, you might mark the sacred space in another way. I had a friend in the Carolinas who used bales of hay, and he referred to it as strawhenge. If you're in a solitary practice, you may still create your own sacred space. If you have access to an appropriate outdoor space, you may make it your own by adding your own personal touches. Maybe an altar or a small pile of stones or a statue will help to make your sacred space special to you. The Mother Grove has created a tradition that has helped to define a sacred space for us. There's an oak tree near our ritual circle. Every year at Beltane, each member of the grove brings a bell or a wind chime to hang from the tree. Before the Beltane Rite, we each hang these bells from the tree in a brief ceremony. As the wind blows through the tree during the Beltane Rite, we remember all our friends and family who've hung bells on the tree in the past, and their memories are carried into the sacred circle with us. You may choose your own variation of the hanging of the bells, or you may just come up with some other ceremony that helps to make your sacred space special to you and the other members of your grove. The ultimate goal is to create a space that has special meaning to you and to anyone whom you invite to use it. Create an atmosphere of peace and tranquility that makes it possible for one entering the space to relax and to seek peace and inspiration. So find a sacred space to call your own. If you're fortunate enough to have such a place or a property that you own, you can set it apart for ritual purposes by marking it in some way with a stone circle or any of the other ways that we've talked about today. If you don't own property, is there a nearby park or other place that would be suitable for a private ritual or contemplation? If not, you can always create an indoor altar. You can bring nature to your altar by adding potted plants or some other objects found in nature, twigs, flowers, feathers, that sort of thing. If all else fails, you can also try some kind of a virtual sacred space. I used to go quite a bit to several sacred circles on Second Life when Second Life was still a thing. But as virtual reality continues to expand and to grow, there may be some interesting sacred circles opening up there as well. Of course, if you have the option to go outdoors, do that instead. But if you're stuck with VR, it's better than nothing. And you can have a way for your own group to gather in the virtual environment. Now that you selected your sacred space for ritual purposes, let's talk a little bit about celebrating the high days. There are usually 3 major phases of celebrating any high day. The first is preparation, the second is the feast, and the third is the ritual. Sometimes the feast follows the ritual, and sometimes the ritual follows the feast. The order is a matter of individual and group preference, and of course convenience of schedule. If your celebration of a high day is a family-friendly event, you can get the children involved by allowing them to participate in the decorating and the food preparation for the feast. Children love the opportunity to indulge their creative energies, and allowing them to help prepare for the holidays can be both learning and teaching experiences for them. If they help you prepare for the feast, you can have a conversation about the particular foods being prepared, their spiritual significance, and why certain foods are harvested or made at certain times of the year. The more they get involved, the more they can learn and grow, and every feast can be a teaching opportunity. When preparing a feast for a high day, try to give each food item meaning. What is the significance of serving this particular dish on this particular day, if any? Why did you choose this particular dish and not some other? If your children are helping you prepare the meal, this would be a good time to have a conversation about the spiritual significance of food in general. Food is, after all, a basic necessity of life. In an industrial age, it's easy to simply run down to the corner and pick up a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk. But it's also easy to miss the amount of labor involved in producing food for our tables. Explain to your children that many of the festivals celebrated by pagans worldwide have to do with growing and harvesting seasons. In ancient times, a failed crop or a poor growing season could mean the death of the tribe. Such a realization can lead to a new awareness of and respect for growing things and the cycles of nature, and of course for the people who grow them for us. When preparing for a ritual, include elements that mean something to you personally. The purpose of a ritual is to raise energy. This usually comes by invoking the archetypal energy of a god or a goddess, or several gods or goddesses. Long drawn-out and monotonous recitations can bore ritual attendees to tears, so a good rule is to be long on music chants and interactive participation, and short on monologues. People learn more by doing than by watching. So if you give them the opportunity to participate, your rituals and rites will be more productive, more meaningful, and more enjoyable. Always remember before celebrating any high day to ask the most important question, which is, why am I doing this? When you know the answer to this question and plan your holidays accordingly, they will be good ones for you and for everyone involved. So think about planning out the coming year by looking at the traditions and the celebrations of each high day. What might you personally do to celebrate each? What foods might you serve? And what is the significance of those foods? What music might you use? And what significance does that music have? The more you plan ahead of time, the more enjoyable your celebrations will be. So how do you craft a rite? The triad of music, tools, and sacred space contains all the elements necessary for an effective ritual, rite, or celebration. All that remains is to create a framework for the ritual itself. The challenge in creating a ritual, especially for a group, is to strike a balance between having a ritual that is unique enough to be interesting, yet familiar enough in format so that everyone has a good idea of what happens next. The template we use is a suggested framework for writing your own rituals. Following this template is by no means a requirement for a Druid ritual. This is only a suggested format that we use quite a bit in the Black Mountain Druid Order. As with all things, take what's useful to you and leave the rest. So the first part of a ritual in the Black Mountain Druid Order is the Processional. Many ancient Celtic sites are on a hill or an elevated space. Among these places, access is often arranged so that the sacred space slowly comes into view as a person walks up the hill or up the trail. Many modern rituals begin with a processional and to the circle. As the group walks to the sacred space, chants or songs are often sung. The march to the circle reminds the seeker that he or she is leaving the world behind and entering into a timeless place. The time spent walking during the processional should be used to leave the cares of the world behind and to bring oneself mentally into the ritual space by setting aside those cares and coming into the moment. The next step is purification. Most circles have some sort of gate where attendees enter. This gate can be as simple as 2 stones on the ground or as elaborate as you have the time and effort to do. The facilitator of the ritual stands at the entrance of the gate, purifying each attendee before they enter the circle. This can be done by smudging, or by sprinkling blessed water on an attendee, or by brushing them lightly with an herb or a plant sacred to the occasion, or by simply waving a bell branch over them. Once they've been purified, they're free to enter the circle, usually in a clockwise or a jostle direction. Next is the Invocation. Here the facilitator briefly states the purpose of the ritual, the significance of the holiday, and its spiritual meaning. A blessing may be asked of a god or a goddess associated with the high day. Then we move on to grounding and centering. After the invocation, a brief meditative music piece can be played so that attendees may ground and center themselves, or a brief meditation guided by the facilitator can achieve the same result. This can be a chant that everyone knows the words to, or a drum circle, or any other participatory activity. Grounding is a process by which we cease to rely solely on our own energy and instead draw energy from the earth herself and from all the life around us. To ground, picture yourself as a tree. Roots of energy shoot out from your feet, reaching into the earth and drawing upon the energy of the earth. Also visualize branches of energy from the top of your head, like tree branches, reaching up to draw energy from the sky. Centering involves becoming present in the moment. Ritual space is a timeless space. Think for a moment about the things that cause you worry and stress. How many of those things have to do with past events? How many of those things have to do with events that haven't happened yet, or may not ever happen? Centering is the process of setting aside those thoughts and worries about the past or the future. When you center yourself, you let go of time and step into a timeless place where all things are possible. is the process of drawing your attention to nothing but the ritual at hand. Bring all of your attention to the present moment, and when you have done so, you are centered. And since you are centered in a timeless sacred circle, you are present at the same time with all your sacred ancestors who have gone before you, and all who will come after you. You are all present in the same time, in the same place, within the sacred circle. Next is the calling of the quarters. This is not strictly a Druid practice, so some Druid traditions call the quarters and some do not. If you choose to do so, turn and face each direction of the compass, starting with the east, and call upon the spirits or the guardians associated with each direction. The facilitator should stand to the north while calling the quarters. Proceed from the east in a clockwise direction until all the quarters have been called. Here's some associations that we use commonly in the Black Mountain Druid Order. First, with the east, the element associated with the east in our order is the air. The color is yellow, the color of the rising sun. The power of the east is birth or creativity. To the south, the element is fire, the color is red. And the power of the south is the power of transformation. To the west, the element is water, the color is blue, and the power is introspection, or that deep unconscious knowledge. To the north is the earth. Its color is black, and its association is prosperity, as in the prosperity that the earth gives us. Once you've called the quarters, if you choose to do so, then we go on to the blessing of peace. While calling the quarters, most Druid traditions also include a wish for peace. This is usually stated while facing each direction after calling a particular quarter. A simple statement such as, "May there be peace in the east," should suffice. If you're doing it in this manner, be sure to include a piece for all 4 cardinal directions. And sometimes we include a blessing of peace for the center by simply saying, "May there be peace at the center." In our tradition, the sacred center consists of the triad of well, fire, and tree. These can be symbolized by a cup or a bowl of water for the well, a candle for the fire, or an open bonfire if the location is available, and a staff or a bell branch for the tree of life. The well and the fire represent introspection and transformation, while the tree of life represents balance, uniting chaos and order in Middle Earth. The tree's roots go deep into the earth, drinking the waters of chaos, while its branches reach into the heavens, soaking up the rays of the sun's life-giving order. The totality of the tree of life therefore brings balance to the forces of chaos and order. To set the center for your ritual, simply place your staff on the ground, and you might make a brief statement about what the well, the fire, and the tree represent, and why they're significant for the particular rite that you're doing. Next is opening the gate. Once the sacred center has been established, the gate to the other world should be opened by calling upon the gatekeeper. By opening the gates to the other world, we allow the wisdom of the ancestors into the circle. Traditionally, the gatekeeper is Manannan MacLear, but other traditions use other gatekeepers, so you use whoever is appropriate for you. Next are the offerings or the sacrifices. At this portion of the rite or the ritual, a gift of some sort is given to the gods or the goddesses of the occasion. This can be a food item tossed into the sacred fire, or a libation poured onto the ground or into a bowl. The idea behind sacrifice instead of offering is that you're giving something that means a great deal to you. This is the practice of only giving your best to the gods and goddesses. In ancient times, finely crafted cauldrons and weapons were tossed into rivers as an offering to the goddess Danu. Whatever offering or sacrifice you make should include an acknowledgement of the god or goddess for whom the offering is intended, where appropriate. Remember that magic is all about balance. To get much, you must give much. In order to receive, you must give. So apportion your sacrifices or offerings to what you're asking or expecting to receive in return. Next is blessings and concerns. At this point, each attendee at the circle is given an opportunity to express gratitude for any blessings they may have received since the last circle, or to express a concern or a problem that they would like help with. This could also be a time for a seasonal expression. For example, at Samhain, members might offer a remembrance of a lost loved one, or at Beltane, they may like to share how they've been blessed by a beloved partner. You may also find it helpful to experiment with the variations on this theme, appropriate to the particular holiday being celebrated. One of the reasons for offering blessings and concerns is that it builds a stronger grove by allowing each member to be supported by all members. Next is an optional portion called Reading of the Omens, or Reading of the Runes. This is an optional portion of the Druid ritual in the Black Mountain Druid Order. If there's a question or concern regarding divination, omens are read by the celebrant. The method used is up to the Grove's personal preferences. Many use rune sticks or ogham fuse. Some use dice, or just interpret signs given by nature herself. For example, I was at a ritual once where a raven landed in the middle of the circle during the omens. This was especially significant since the rite being celebrated at the time was in honor of the Morrigan. The animal most closely associated with the Morrigan is the raven. And of course, for the raven to show up while we were invoking the Morrigan was a very good omen. So if you don't have any experience with reading the omens or reading runes, you can visit the Black Mountain Druid Order's website at blackmountaindruidry.com, and there you'll find a whole section on what the various different characters of the ogham mean. Next is a seasonal rite if you're celebrating a particular season, and at this portion of the ritual, something specific to the high day being celebrated is inserted. So for example, you may choose to insert an ancestor vigil for Samhain, or a hanging of the bells for Beltane, or a lighting of the Yule log for winter solstice. Next is the Thanksgiving, and during this portion of the rite, an offering of thanks to the gods, goddesses, elementals, or other spirits of place are offered. You may also choose to thank any participants who contributed to the ritual by offering their time and talents. At our Maven celebrations, we usually go around the circle and have everyone name at least one thing they're thankful for. Then finally, the closing of the gates and dismissing of the quarters. At this point, call upon the gatekeeper to seal the way to the other world. If you've called the quarters, dismiss them as well. You can also choose to sing or chant a closing musical offering at this time. Then finally, closing the rite. At this point, you may sing a final song and make a final announcement. We usually end with a processional, in which we leave the circle through the gate while singing or chanting. When we leave the circle, we usually go counterclockwise or widdershins around the circle before exiting at the gate. When the processional has reached a predetermined destination, you can wish to offer a thanks or a statement of dismissal. This outline is just a suggested format for those with little or no experience in crafting rituals and rites. It's by no means a definitive Druid ritual. As with all things, take what you find useful and leave the rest. So what if you don't have a group or a grove and you're in solitary practice? According to some estimates, as many as 70 to 80% of pagans do not belong to any grove, circle, or other group. If this estimate is true, then the chances are pretty good that if you're watching this video, you're a solitary practitioner. Although the outline we just talked about is written from the perspective of group ritual practice, it can be easily adopted for solitary practice. If you have access to an outdoor space that would be appropriate, you can perform your own rituals there. Some druids have an indoor altar that they use for such purposes. The only rule is to use that which helps you draw closer to the divine or the inspiration of the Alwyn or the Imbus. If you're in solitary practice, but would like to eventually join a grove or organize your own, there's information on the website on becoming affiliated with our order. We offer online support and assistance for groves choosing to form as members of our order. For this week's activity, try crafting a rite of your own. First, find the next high day by consulting the information in the Wheel of the Year section on the website at blackmountaindruidry.com. Once there, just go to the search bar on the right and type in Wheel of the Year, or go into the About section or the Resources section and find the information. Using the framework that we just discussed, write your own ritual for the next occurring high day. You may wish to rehearse it, and then when the high day occurs, perform it either alone or with friends who also may be interested in the Druid path. Once you've prepared your ceremony, there are several questions you should ask during the ritual to get the most meaning out of it. Some of these questions are: how will this rite help me to find balance between the forces of chaos and order within myself, within my community, within the world? How will this rite help me to find balance between my own persona and my own shadow? How will this ritual help me to find balance between the forces of light and darkness at work within myself and within the world? Will this rite help me to make the changes I need to make within myself? If not, will this ritual help lead me to acceptance of my current situation? How will this rite help me along the path to spiritual growth and development? On the website, you can find a list of the high days celebrated by most pagans worldwide and their dates. Wiccans and some other pagan traditions refer to these as Sabbats. Most Druids refer to them as high days rather than Sabbats, due to the association of the word Sabbath or Sabbath with Judeo-Christian tradition. In the Southern Hemisphere, these holidays would be reversed to correspond with the seasons there. In the Welsh tradition of the Druid revival, there are 4 Alban gates, corresponding with the solstices and the equinoxes. Alban is derived from the ancient name for Scotland. Alba means white or light. Since the Wheel of the Year is celebration of the sun's path across the heavens, Alba is used to reflect this association. All these various names for the high days can be confusing to the beginner, but once you're familiar with them, pick the one that works the best for you and use it. The book Foundational Druidry in the Black Mountain Druid Order is our manual for training those new to the Druid path. It was written as a companion piece to our free online Foundational Druidry course and teaches you what it means to be a contemporary Celtic shaman. In this book, you'll learn about deep ecology, herbalism, animal wisdom, meditation, dream work, and vision seeking. You'll also learn about Celtic gods and goddesses, some rites of passage practiced by our order, and holidays celebrated by contemporary Druids as we honor the Wheel of the Year. A portion of all sales goes towards funding the work of our order, helping our members to develop in mind, body, spirit, and emotion through the way of the Druid.